We are kicking off podcast number 4 with Next Level Driveaway guest Brandon Zupi, and I am Steve Bootsma, along with Scott Wynn as your host today. So, Brandon, welcome. Would you give us a little background on yourself and your company?
Yeah, of course, and thank you for having me. So, Next Level Driveaway, we've been in business for about 2 years now. I have about 5 years in Driveaway itself and about 12 years in transportation overall. You know, we're a fairly new group on the block, but we're trying to, bring something new and fresh to the game here. We're all kind of from different backgrounds within transportation. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here today and have a little discussion with you guys.
Happy to have you, Brandon.
Absolutely.
Well, let's kick it off with some topics regarding our industry trends out there. From your vantage point, what are the biggest changes you've seen in the used truck landscape over the past 2 years?
Well, I'd say for us, as a Driveaway, what we've seen in the last 1.5 to 2 years is other groups like ourselves, that are getting into the market. I don't know how many it's been. Geez, it's probably 4 to 5 new Driveaways, new competition for us out there that seem to be doing a really good job, which in a lot of them are used truck heavy, and it makes it competitive and it's a lot of fun. But that's got to be one of the biggest changes that we've seen. You know, you have some new names coming up and some groups that are working hard to get a piece of the market. You know, in general, the used truck landscape over the last few years and kind of how it's affected us in a way of, lack of new trucks hitting the market after COVID, fleets hanging on to their equipment much longer than before, putting a premium on late model, low mileage equipment, driving up the price of that as a new truck substitute. So then, what's kind of left are older trucks with higher mileage. And this is a challenge in our world, right? Trucks not being ready, a pickup can happen, due to the truck sitting for long periods of time, or breakdowns en route that kind of lead to, multiple delays across multiple trips for our customers, which leads to delays to our dealership partners. And that is a lot of stuff that we've kind of had to deal with over the last few years, that we've seen is just a lot of trucks that just need a little bit more love.
Good stuff. Good. So kind of along that lines, and you maybe alluded to it a little bit, with the supply chain issues that we've had here in our industry and how does that affect you and your business on the Driveaway side?
Well, so us being a service and, none of the supply chain, it affects you guys first and then it kind of works its way down. We're more of the bottom of the list, one of the last costs associated with a dealer end user, to get their product to their customer, right? So as far as that's concerned within the supply chain, that's kind of where we sit. We move a lot of used trucks, yes, but also I guess with the supply chain, we do move some new trucks with OEMs and they seem to have been pretty consistent. We're moving them to dealers. We're moving them to the upfitters all over the country. And the OEMs seem to be running on time as far as we can see. But also the pickup after production and we take it to the final destination as well. So we're kind of, we're involved in the complete supply chain, the complete build of a truck sometimes. And it seems to be going pretty smooth. It doesn't seem there's any backlogs with OEMs, but coming out of outfitters, most get, within around this time of the year, they're about 6 to 8 weeks behind. But those can be different reasons. It can be fluctuation of employment over the year, right? Trying to gauge, how many employees you need or capacity, sales capacity at locations. So I really can't say exactly what it is, but it seems to be everything's moving pretty smoothly, but however, with the used truck market, the way it is currently, it does kind of tighten up margins and increase competition for those lanes, even the newer stuff. So when you remove a lot of the used truck movement, you've got a lot of competition to get in with these type of groups and keep things moving, which can restrict and tighten margins for ourselves.
That makes sense. Yeah, 6 to 8 weeks on the bodybuilder side does not seem too bad right now. And I think some of the delay in that has also been just, people cutting back on their labor, not as many employees at the upfitting location or at the manufacturing plant where they're pumping out the bodies or the hook lift.
They have to decide.
I've heard some guys 60, 90 days out on bodybuild stuff. I mean, it's a little backlogged at times. So you've talked on the shift post-COVID from later model, lower mile to some older units. You've talked on the shift from more business going into the OEMs and getting them out of production or off the out of the manufacturer's yards. Are there any other trends that you're seeing for buyer behavior out there, different parts of the country, or is there anything that's worth noting there?
I'd say a lot of the times, I guess especially in used right now, what you're seeing is guys are staying a little more regional with their buys, closer to home, a little less auction units, a little more quality over quantity. So over the most recent months, some groups have held off with purchasing altogether, but, most of the time it seems to me it looks like it's slow but more strategic buys. Everyone's cautious of their inventory levels. So, we work with dealers that at times like this, like I said, they move a little bit more regionally, and some of them have some internal drivers that they'll utilize from, location to location internal moves. And a lot of the times they're trying to utilize those drivers that they have on staff to execute those moves. So we have seen a little bit of that. The miles have shortened a little bit, not across all dealers in everybody's movements, but I have seen it enough to say it could be a small trend.
So you spoke a little bit about drivers. How's the current driver shortage that we read about in the industry newsletters and articles? How does that impact your market segment?
Yeah, so in Driveaway, and I can speak to it as far as us being young and we're in growth mode, we have no shortage of drivers. We're growing weekly. We're building those relationships. We're getting them on the road. So we're hiring daily. In these times though, we do a bit more, we're a bit more selective, I guess you could say. We'll start to look at the region in which they live in, the experience that they have. We're going to pick the drivers that can make an instant impact, and we're going to grow that relationship and build out our driver base. I have heard with some of the larger groups, the larger driveaways, that there has been a driver hiring freeze. I can't speak to that directly. It's what I've heard. So it seems to me that within Driveaway, drivers are still available. Drivers are hungry to get on the road.
No, I was just curious. Do you see certain areas of the country that it's a little bit more difficult to source drivers, say maybe West Coast versus East Coast or Texas area?
Well, I can say Texas is big.
Right.
Southeast, a lot of drivers that domicile out of there. Out west, it does get a little more sporadic with where drivers are located. Those can be a challenge, but it is important to get drivers in certain areas for business when guys are starting weeks off and you have work in those areas. But ultimately, you do rely a lot on your connectivity for stuff out west. We have a lot of drivers that come out of PA and the East Coast. I would say upper Midwest can be a challenge to hire drivers out of. I don't know what the reasoning is. I don't know if, drivers just decide to live where it's warm and beautiful, or, where a lot of the work and where the manufacturing is as well. Southeast,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just the volume, the Midwest where I'm at, it's pretty sparse, right? I mean, it's very spread out, very rural. I will give you a shout out. Yesterday, I sent you a dump truck that I bought in Illinois out in the country somewhere, and you got right on that, and I think that one's getting delivered today. So shout out to you there.
And I appreciate that. That was awesome. It was great to hear from you. And right now, that's the name of the game. I mean, you're taking the trips that you're given. You're given a realistic rate to get that moved in a good amount of time, and we have to execute right now. I mean, there's shortage of moves. There's no doubt about it. So it is all about how you execute.
Well, and I'm sure if you have established lanes in certain areas, you have, that higher connectivity. You probably do lean into those areas a little bit harder too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Anything that we have that may be non-spot market or something that's contractual or consistent lanes for different manufacturers we may work with, it really does. And that does go into how we sell, how we set up our days and who we're calling on, is to build that connectivity on the areas where our drivers are going to end up. And it's imperative that we work every day to make sure that we're keeping our drivers moving. And I can't say it's super easy right now, but we're making do.
Well, we've talked on a few things regarding maybe more higher mileage trucks coming out there and fuel costs, insurance, things like that. But I mean, how do you handle the balance between rising costs and keeping your services efficient?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd have to say, operations and sales working together as a team. It's constant communication all the time, but more so during times of business inconsistencies. We have to try and cut out additional expenses as much as possible. That means, knowing where our drivers are located, when and where they're landing. My sales team will then make the dials. We can't control a lot of the time where our trips are coming out of when we're making those calls, but what we can control is our effort made, right? So we look at different business segments. We love used trucks, but a lot of the times, when that's down, we have to go out and look who's moving trucks, look at different verticals. How can we connect these trips to keep drivers moving? And I think that in turn, it does continue to help the used truck industry that is moving trucks right now by giving them that connectivity, by trying to cut down on the cost of, hey, I have to do X, Y, and Z to get my driver there. This is the cost to do so. So especially as a young group such as ourselves, we're around 200 drivers, where some of the big guys are 400 or 500. And that means that in times like this, more times than ever, we need the connectivity to make sure that the driver base we do have can get to where our trucks are located. And so we do the best we can to get as close as we can to major cities, to where trucks are picking up out of, so that we can not increase costs to deliver these trucks out, right? We want to be with the market, and that is sometimes tough to balance. But I would also say on our operations side, the mapping of the route, the drivers being on the phone with the dispatchers, discussing rate and ETA and to meet the customer's needs, right? We have to understand where and what our drivers are doing in order for us to be able to execute on the sales side. So the communication is very, very important.
Good stuff. Another big topic in the industry today that we read a lot about is just tariffs, regulatory factors, with the EPA, what's getting pushed back, what's getting pulled back, what's on hold, how does that impact the moving of vehicles right now? Are you seeing where that's like maybe pressing pause in some areas, or what is that? What are you feeling like on both the new and the used side of the truck industry?
It's a good question. I would say that the question could be turned around. So with our segment being in service, a lot of the stuff happens on the front half that we don't see a lot of the times, right? Okay. The supply chain disruptions, things of that nature. By the time we're getting that truck, it's our turn to service, to execute and get that truck moved. I mean, now just the tariffs and regulatory factors in general, the impact of higher costs for consumers is an overall challenge, right? When people aren't out buying and America doesn't feel good about getting out there and buying the goods, it does affect the transportation industry, right? And the vocational side, your dump trucks, your crane truck, all that kind of stuff is dictated by commercial real estate, people getting out there and building. So, I mean, the higher cost, more effect, that's what I see a little bit more than the direct effect on our business, I guess, if that makes sense.
It does. Yep. Very well said.
Well, Brandon, how about spot rates? So how do spot rates and load rates influence your decisions in operations?
Yeah. We're a pretty young group over here still, right? We're growing. Most of our business is run off the spot market. However, we do have groups that we have some contractual rates with. It can be very challenging at times. We have to be resourceful, work harder to be efficient, like we were discussing before, as possible on the operations side, with attention to detail, and being timely is very important in our industry. And so when the spot market stuff, of course, it keeps up, Scott, I'll quote a truck for you. It's wherever we're at right now in the marketplace. But with our contractual stuff, it's, things change throughout the year, and the contracted rates are the contracted rates. And you really have to figure out how to make it work.
Well, at the end of the day, Driveaway is a spot rate. I mean, that's what's driving it. I mean, do you guys operate on a load board, or how does that work?
Yeah. So everything goes out to a load board. For our drivers to see, typically, you'll send me a quotation. I'll get you a quote, and you say, hey, Brandon, let's get this rolling. What's a good looking ETA? I go to my team or I go and I look at, where we all are over the country and I give you an estimated ETA and we get it up on the board. And then that's where our dispatchers get to work. It's calling out and selling the load and not being reactionary and allowing the drivers to reach out to you. Our operation people have to act as salespeople. They are. Everything we do is sales and everything we do is relationships, and they have to have the relationship that my sales team has with the customers. They have to have with their drivers. So constant communication, knowing where guys are at. When it's on that load board, we want it on that load board for the least amount of time it possibly can be. And we work very hard towards keeping that load board clear, right? Make room for more trucks.
So we're kind of a unique business in that we purchase some non-running trucks once in a while, or maybe high mileage, maybe not sure they'll DOT type trucks, right? So say I bought something like that from Scott. Is it possible for you to like tow those? Can you load them on detaches, drop decks? Do you handle some of that freight also?
Yeah. So we do have a brokerage side where we will move non-runners via step deck or RGN trailer. And mainly that is to just support our used truck or our Driveaway base. It's nothing that we're building out. It's more there for support. So we do that. We'll do everything we can to see if we can get that bad boy drivable. But if it doesn't meet DOT, we'll get it moved.
All right, let's talk about best practices in relationships. What do you think most dealers or fleet managers misunderstand about the Driveaway process, and how could you clear that up for them?
Okay, I like that one. So I think the biggest thing, and the thing that we hear the most when we make dials and we call people and we try to, we give them our value prop, what we are, who we are, what we're about. The thing that I hear the most is that all Driveaways are the same. We all use the same drivers and we all provide the same service. Though that statement is true, I guess in its simplest form, every group is different in how they operate and approach the market. The way I like to think of it is whoever can control the chaos best, because it's chaos all the time. And it's all about execution, right? We don't manufacture anything. We don't have any assets. We live and die by our relationships on both sides of the business. We dial the phone all day and every day. If you're not prospecting, you're dying. We're very strategic about this as well. We have meetings to gain understanding of what drivers and dispatchers are seeing and looking for based on our board. We like to see ourselves as salespeople, not order takers. And this is just based off feedback that we've gotten before, is lack of engagement with sales reps. Really tough to get answers a lot of the time from people in a timely fashion. That's where the communication comes in. That's where you separate yourself, is when we get out there, we understand our customers, right? What's a huge thing that a lot of people tell me? It takes forever to get a quote back from X, Y, and Z, right? I'm trying to quote this truck. I'm trying to get it moved. I want to use your services. How does it feel when it takes a full day or 3 hours to get a quote back? We push very hard to get quotes back within 15 minutes, right? We're intentional with call blocks. We mix up our segmentation in the market. And no, it doesn't seem like that would be a direct effect for you, Scott or Steve. But what I said before is the harder we work to connect things and the harder we work to have business all over the country, the more effective we are for you. So, we all do things that are similar. It's what you do to execute every single day and to be a good partner. You're looking for partners in this, right? Spot market. Yep. You're quoting one thing a day. Nothing's contractual. Your customers can go wherever they want. And there's a lot of us. So you got to give them a reason to stay and to move with us. Like having 100% share of wallet within Driveaway is, I just don't think it can be obtainable, and sometimes it does, but it is good for your customer to have a variety of options, and it's good for you to keep up your serviceability. So I just think that you have to be intentional. Times like this right now, tougher times to keep all your drivers moving and happy, but we try to put our best foot forward on the driver side too. So there's the customer side, keeping the customer engaged, following up, doing those types of things, making sure that they feel listened to and understood. But then on the other side, you have to do the same thing for the drivers, right? those drivers will work. I want to say when the relationship is better with your operations team, when they're doing the right things, constantly communicating with them, making the decision sometimes that's tough, taking care of your drivers, sitting in the middle and saying, well, this shouldn't be billed back to the customer, but this also isn't the driver's fault. It's being able to sit in the middle and have the leadership that we do to say, well, we're going to do what's right here, right? The customer doesn't need to be dinged. The driver doesn't need to be dinged. You have to show them they're business owners themselves. These are all 1099 contract drivers that run a business. And if you treat them like that and you treat them with respect, much like you do with your drivers, you're going to have, or much like you do with your customers, you're going to have drivers that'll go through walls for you, that will work hard for you and your company. So yes, they are the same drivers that will drive for me, that will drive for someone else. But sometimes they work harder, they work faster, they understand. If you give them the why, if you let them know, like this, you have to work both sides, and it's internal communication with our teams too. We're both dealing with both sides of this business, but we have to be in lockstep together and understand what the goal is every single day. So I would have to say those are probably the biggest things that set Driveaways apart. I would say one other thing would be, following up, communicating clearly and timely. And one thing that we like that I think is important is rate justification. Not all rates are created equal. And if I email you a rate, Scott, normally I'm picking up the phone and I'm talking to you about how you feel about it. What do you think? This is why I need this. I think the more that we can communicate and educate, your vendor partner, your dealer partners and all that, the better it can be, the more understanding there can be and the more respect there can be both ways, right? So that they don't just see us as another, just another vendor. No, these guys care. They're an extension of my business. They want to see us succeed. They understand what we do. And I think it's very important. So that would be what I would say is the biggest misconception, is that we're all created equally.
Well, and it comes down to it's communication. It's expectation versus delivery. It's a sense of urgency, service recovery, and ultimately, I think all those things equate to trust. But that applies to everybody in this industry. It really does. I mean, you can take away from that.
All it is, it's relationships. It's communication. It's showing mutual respect. It's picking up the phone. It's whether it's good or it's bad, and just talking it out and figuring it out. And it's something we love to do and we're very passionate about. And I think there's a lot of other driveways out there that do the same. And sometimes from what we've heard, some don't. So
I want to circle back to, helping you be efficient and timely on responding to quotes. There's got to be some advice for customers like us on what are some best practices that if we would implement or information that we could supply you up front that would enable you to, give us a little quicker turnaround time. And again, create, again, that fluid relationship building again to try to keep everybody on the same page, very professional.
Yep. And I'll admit, some of my best customers send me stuff that I put to, I kind of figure out how to most effectively get this in the system and get it going. And I love doing that for my folks. But the best way to be efficient with quoting, getting the information you need so you can turn around and get that rate to the customer or say, yes, sir, this is what we want to do is, I would say setting proper expectation with your customer. Let's talk about, what is the expectation for this trip, making sure it's clear with your customer, it's clear with me, and it's clear with you, giving all the info needed for operations and drivers to successfully to schedule the pickup. So a lot of the times it's what I experience sometimes is people change jobs quite a bit. So updated contacts and phone numbers. I mean, a lot of the times we'll get, hey, we're buying it from this group. Here's the contact at this location. And it's, hey, they haven't worked here in 3 years, and so it is beneficial that helps us not to have to go back to you. You're busy. We don't want to slow you down and to ask the additional questions. A lot of the times we like to know if it's a manual or an automatic. We like to know if it has a pintle hitch on the back. That's really helpful because we have drivers out there with all different capabilities over the road. And if we can, that's how we can give you a better ETA as well, really knowing. So, and we can turn around quotations quickly and get that truck moving faster with the correct information, and always making sure that the driving conditions meet DOT. And I know sometimes this is what I was told. This is how, they said it's in good condition, and most of the time it is, but there are times where, we show up under the impression that this bad boy is ready to rock and roll. And a lot of the times it does need new batteries. And not that it's a big deal. We don't mind waiting around and taking the truck once they're done in a couple hours, putting in the batteries. However, then there's driver downtime. There's additional costs to you, and there could be additional costs to your customer depending on how the deal's made up. And we don't want to see that. So we like to make sure that the trucks are drivable. And a lot of the times when we call to check and make sure they're ready, right, the person on the other side said, yeah, it's here. It's ready to go. Mm-hmm. We ask a few more questions to nail it down and make sure there's nothing. But sometimes that's just the case. But anything that you guys can help out and make sure that the group that you're buying from, make sure they get that work complete before we head in there.
That makes sense. And preferably you'd like them to confirm it's ready the day you're picking it up, right? Not that it was ready a week ago and it seemed to start and run fine then.
Well, yes. And that can be the challenge sometimes. Yeah. This is ready to go. And then we get there a week later. Well, it doesn't start. I mean, it's been sitting for a week, or depending on the condition of the truck, there could be a couple things that come up, right? We will make sure that it's ready by a phone call. And then our drivers are required to call 24 hours in advance prior to pickup. And a lot of the times that will negate a lot of that, but sometimes it's still a challenge. But yeah, anything that you guys can do to help is always appreciated.
Where are the keys?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. I can't find the keys to this truck. Well, that could be an issue. But sometimes it's as easy as that. In a lot of the times when the drivers do go to pick up and it's like, oh, they can't find the key, they're going to look for it. But a lot of the times the place you're picking up from, and it's not that they don't care and it's not that they don't, but they're busy. They're doing other things. They're taking care of their customers. This is a sold truck now, and it's, hey, this isn't really our deal anymore. We sold this unit. So sometimes even just not having keys can set back a driver a couple hours, which ultimately can set back pickup times for someone else's next truck.
Well, and I get in the way of connectivity, but maybe reverse it a little bit. I mean, how do you overcome the showing up at, 10 minutes till close, or showing up on a Saturday, or, some of those hard ones where it's like, if only I had a little bit more time to make sure we can get it all squared away. And I mean, kind of a reverse expectation, what's a good way to combat that?
Ask that one more time in a different,
I guess basically showing up after hours. There's a big one.
Yeah,
or showing up right at close, or showing up on the weekend.
So that's the challenge sometimes. And a lot of the times the pickup locations will go, why can't you just pick up within hours? And it's, yes, sir, I completely understand you guys have your hours. The more that groups can understand how Driveaway works, and you want to pick up within hours, and but go back to what we were just discussing, that 2 hours of looking for those keys. Now it set that driver back 2 hours. Well, they were going to be there Friday at 3. Now they're getting there Friday at 5:30, 6 o'clock. And that pickup location said, well, you said you were going to be here at 3. Now you're not here. Tough, which is understandable, right? I mean, but understanding that we're doing the very best that we can to get your truck delivered on time within the time frames we've given. So a lot of the times we do, our team will call ahead and they will try to arrange weekend pickups or after hour pickups. And it's not trying to be a nuisance. It's trying to keep the driver happy, because when the driver sees, okay, well, now I have to wait until Friday morning. And most people just be like, okay, so why can't they just wait till the next day? Well, at that point, there's cost involved. That driver now has to get a hotel. That driver now has another night of downtime. That driver now has to set back and push another trip that was supposed to be moved on Monday to Wednesday. And so it just kind of sets them back a little bit, and they incur more costs. Because really, I can't turn around and tell my customer, hey, my driver didn't make the window. But they don't care why they didn't make the window. They didn't make the window. So if I charge a nickel and dime $100 hotel room, how does that look, right? You don't want to work with someone that's going to keep adding costs to something that you perceive as could have been remedied, right? So
right.
It can be a challenge sometimes, and that's where you have to sit in the middle as a company and go, hey, let's live to fight another day. The opportunity cost here with having a wonderful driver and this wonderful customer, why am I going to bill either of them for this? Let's figure out what we need to do. So
sure.
That hopefully that wasn't too long-winded, but
not at all.
No, so I think that really is your challenge, right? On how to build that trust relationship, not only between the dealer and the driver, and then longer term, like building that longer term relationship. Like, how do you work through those hiccups? You said it too, that there's going to be some extra charges from time to time, got there and the tire was flat and we needed to send somebody in and to your point, probably just you're doing your best to translate that information to the customer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and you have to. That's what I'm talking about, the good and the bad. Like those are conversations you have to have. And for instance, the driver that now got pushed back and they're not picking up till Wednesday, well, that gets brought down to my sales team. They're known, hey, I know this was picking up Monday, but driver had an issue with their other pickup. It's now going to be Wednesday. So now it's the job of that salesperson to pick up the phone and to make a call and explain what happened, apologize, and understand and have that relationship. Have that, like, hey, man, I know you're not going to shoot me wrong. Like, I know, okay, so that happened. That puts me in a tight bind. But you know what? As long as you're there Wednesday, we're good. And other times that Wednesday is not an option because you know your customer so well, because you understand what's going on with that truck in that person's world, right? Not every truck, not every move is the same. Not every need is the same every time you call me. So I'm already knowing that Monday was your deadline to get that truck moved. So now I have to communicate that to my operations team. Hey guys, what are we doing? Let's get out there. Let's look for another driver. Let's do the very best we can to get this truck picked up on Monday. But you got to put your best foot forward in those times. You can't just say, well, it is what it is. They'll get there on Wednesday. Well, that's just not a good way of building a relationship either.
No. And I can say as a dealer too, sometimes we don't like what we hear, but we need to know the truth, right? Mm-hmm. Don't give us smoke and mirrors and make us feel all warm and fuzzy. And then reality is not that pretty, and just, be straight up. This is the facts, and we all dislike it, but we'll work through it, right?
Right. Because Steve, if you have to go in a different direction at that point, my goal is to get that truck delivered. That doesn't change. So if you see that, hey, I know this other group, they said they had someone, go ahead, call them. Call them, Steve. I'll get my driver off of it. We'll live to fight another day. Send me your next quote. I'm really sorry, but I give you the ability to do that. If I don't tell you and I tell you everything's great, well, I'm doing you a disservice just because why? I want to move your truck. That doesn't make much business sense.
No, that's just being a good partner. I could tell you a time that I had some trucks in Farmington, New Mexico, and I had no idea how big of a dead spot that is. But I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks into the move being done. I got tapped on the shoulder and said, yeah, we're not going to be able to get there. And then it reset the clock completely. I think it took us almost a month to get those out of there. But it all comes back to communication, and that's how you build your trust.
Yep.
Shift it up a little bit. So be it maybe somebody that's been handling their own Driveaway with company drivers, or somebody just now opening up a dealership. What advice would you give somebody considering using Driveaway for the first time?
I would say get rates from a few different groups. Do your homework. Speak to the person that you're going to be working with by phone. This should be initiated by a group that, I don't want to say a good Driveaway, but by the Driveaway should initiate that call with a new person, and they should be asking questions, and they should want to understand what your needs are. But as far as the customer is concerned, I would ask questions. Get justification of the rate based on the others you have received. Ask those questions. Why? Professionals should be able to explain to you the pricing and how they work internally as a group. So all I'm basically saying is don't just take the cheapest rate all the time, because that's what you're getting. And sometimes you really can offer that great rate, and it isn't just a rate out there. But do your due diligence, ask the questions, make sure you know who you're partnering with, and that's how you can make a lasting vendor supplier relationship.
Maybe just another little plug for the UTA there, but having a lot of different contacts with other dealers or dealer groups, referrals are a big thing to me. If I want to check out Next Level Driveaway, I can always email Scott or somebody else in the dealer group and say, hey, have you had some experience with Brandon and his team, and how did it go in the past?
Yep.
And even for that
we
matter,
welcome that.
Right, exactly, right. Those are your best job earners right there is a good referral. So
That's right.
Word of mouth is the best marketing tool.
yeah.
Yep. Do a good job. Be consistent. Stay involved. Just do what you say you're going to do, right? And people find that refreshing. And I believe if we do that and we stick to it, that we're going to build some good relationships. And the UTA is a big part of that for us.
So maybe looking into the future a little bit. I don't know what you have for a crystal ball there, but what are you seeing in the next maybe 5 years evolving on the Driveaway side of things? Again, regulatory and environmental impacts will change things, whether it's EV type units or maybe. Are you preparing for anything specifically right now or looking for certain drivers in certain areas?
I mean, I don't know. I wish I could tell you. I mean, it all depends on the infrastructure with these new, alternate, fuel alternative vehicles. I can tell you, and I know it's nothing that's new technology or anything, but CNG, we move CNG units, and sometimes the infrastructure is a little bit shaky, and it takes a little bit more time and effort on behalf of our operations team to make sure that we're executing properly, that we're taking the right lanes, that we're ensuring that these locations are open for fueling. And so it does take on a lot more. So it just depends, with the EV and all that is how infrastructure is built out. I mean, does it look like they'll be hauling some of those units? Does it, so it's hard to tell. I would say until we're all comfortable with autonomous vehicles and, drivers are going to be needed and Driveaway is going to be here. Hopefully after I get out that it all changes, but that's kind of what I see. I mean, we just kind of roll with the punches and we keep our ear to the ground and, but that's what I see. Or what I could say to that, I guess.
So I know we talked about, what buyer trends and different regions in the country and what you're seeing, but shift it up a little bit. I know personally, if you want to look at Phoenix, already a massive metroplex, but I'm going to group that in here. Abilene, Texas, with all the stuff going on in there right now. Columbus, Ohio, East St. Louis or Western Illinois, however you look at it. Mm-hmm. Are there any emerging markets or regions that you're seeing that will become more important for the Driveaway industry in the next few years?
Well, I mean, you've got a lot of manufacturing growth in the southeast. I mean, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama. There's a lot of investments being made in, the EV, what we were just talking about, plants, by domestic and international automakers. You see a lot of commercial building out in California. So when you start looking at it from there, I know a lot of this stuff can be like yellow iron, but there is a lot of DOT-driven trucks within the vocational world that'll be supporting, electronic grids and the data centers that are going in all over the country. And, we'll continue to, with some of the markets that I know that we move trucks to, like Orlando and Kansas City, a lot of home building, road construction, things of that nature. But I could see those being some hotbeds, but kind of like you said, Phoenix, Columbus, we're seeing a lot out of there, and hopefully it continues. But that's what I would say within the next couple of years.
Nice. So along that lines, we're also seeing continued an uptick in new updates in technology all the time. Which affect a lot of different things on your end. I'm sure safety, tracking, even AI. Is that a thing in the Driveaway community right now?
Yeah, and I mean technology. Safety could be the number one key for everyone. For us, with driver warnings and technology in trucks, and staying compliant and working in a safe manner as technology continues to develop. Driver tracking. It's something in our world that can't be forced per se. They're all 1099 contract guys. They're not W-2'd employees, so we can't make them, we can't track them all the time. There's a lot of drivers that will do it. There are certain customers that we have that if you want this, you have to do it. And in those cases, we find drivers that will. But I would love to see some sort of, driver tracking come out that would be universally used. And it's just tough in our area. A lot of it is still manual, grinding on the phones, communicating. So it'd be great to see something come out of that, but I won't, hold my breath on that right now. But I mean, routing of drivers in lanes. I mean, I guess I could see AI helping with that. You know how many lanes that, you're doing on the frequency, and it can kind of give you ideas of where these cluster of trucks are going to be and where you're going to need to find work out of. Can it make us more efficient? Sure. I'm sure it can. And I'd love to see it. So I'm welcoming to it.
Oh, Brandon, I want to, just a total hypothetical, but if you could change one thing about the industry overnight, what would it be?
I guess I spoke to it before, especially within Driveaway. I guess I would say perception of our business, getting away from being commoditized and maybe being looked at as more of a partner in the industry. And I think it's not by all, but I mean, kind of like we talked about before, I would love the perception to be that, we're out there to be a part of your business, and we're out there to support you guys, and whatever we can do to assist with that, I'd love it. So perception, I would say.
Very good. So trying to build this relationship with new drivers and staff, how do you approach mentoring and training? How important will that be for the future of the industry as well?
Well, our philosophy is, learn from your mistakes and continue coaching every day. We try to be perfect, but no one is. We work together as a group, and even though we hire independent contractors, we work to treat them as a part of our team. We include them in, what will help them perform their job better and work to exceed their expectations. And, we work to have healthy relationships with everyone we work with. Training's constant. We're constantly having communication, especially with my sales reps, and learning and growing within our industry, understanding who our customers are, what they do every day. And, it does help. We do have a lot of like-minded people within our business, or within our company that, we have from all across transportation. I mean, we have people that have worked for body companies, for upfitters. We have leasing and rental people that work with us. We have guys that worked in dealerships. So the better understanding in the hiring process, and the training becomes a little bit easier when you've hired the right folks. And I think we've done a really good job of that.
How do you stay informed and adapt to the changes across the country regarding regulations, industry standards? And do you have any tips for others to stay agile?
Sometimes it's tough. It's ever changing. It's pretty constant. But what I'd say is we listen. We listen to our customers. We listen to our drivers. Huge source of knowledge. Even though, you may not be moving a truck, we work to stay within communication and understand what the environment is and what it looks like to you guys today and the outlook going forward. So I think we rely a lot on our relationships, our human capital within our business. Our safety team is wonderful. So they are out there and they let us know when something is about to change and when something else is rolling out, and we get that out to our drivers and we talk about it. We have the conversation. So I believe that that's probably the best way to do it. Like I said, it's hard to keep up with all that. So
my head goes to California. I mean, any given week, it seems like something's changing, or across the country, bridge laws. Some states harder than others to stay up with.
Yep.
I think it was you that was even saying the other day to me about it was Steve, some tires that, you went to pick up some trucks in California, and the tires were all DOT and good to go, but your driver said, "Oh, they're older than 5 years. I can't drive in California with them."
Right.
Yeah. Like that was a new one to me. I mean, I don't know. That has to be that. I mean, we pick up some auction trucks. We pick up a lot of different trucks, and I'd have to think that a lot of those tires are a little bit over that age. So like that's it. That's the knowledge. That's the conversations that you have. You put that in your back pocket. You go, obviously you validate. We want to make sure that what's being said is true. And then after that, we put it in our tool belt and we'll communicate it to our drivers. We'll communicate it to our sales team, our operations team. It's just another thing that we can look at so that if that would occur to us, sometimes you're not going to know before you get on site, right? You're not asking what the age of the tire is when you're calling to make sure it's ready to pick up. But knowing that and maybe saying to your customer, "Hey, we've experienced this. Maybe, do you know how old those tires are? Because this could be something we run into And to avoid that, because once the driver's on site and if they don't leave with the truck, you're paying an attempted pickup fee, right? You're paying for the driver to stay over while the new tires go on. So those are places that you can save money for your customers just simply by knowing what's going on.
Well, there's no doubt throughout this whole discussion that, the critical impact that your industry plays within the used truck world, or even the new truck world for that matter, just keeping things rolling and is so instrumental. And it's something that we need to be aware of and keep at the forefront. So I really, appreciate you, Brandon, for joining us today and just sharing some of your information from that side of the desk.
Of course. And I really appreciate you guys asking me to come on and taking the time to listen to me, to talk about Driveaway. It's a lot of fun. We have a passion for it. We love doing it every day, and it's good to talk about it sometimes. So I really do appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Well, everybody, thank you for joining us for our insight with Brandon Zupi from Next Level Driveaway. And we will see you on our next edition of the Used Truck Podcast.